What's up everyone, my name is Gothix, and for today's video, I'll be reacting to What is a Woman, which, depending on who you are, it may just be the most complicated question you'll ever be asked. Unless of course you're rooted in truth and reality, then it shouldn't be that difficult to answer in the first place. Now this documentary was put out by the Daily Wire and it's starring Matt Walsh. Now in case you don't know who Matt Walsh is, he was the guy that recently appeared on an episode of the Dr. Phil show, and he asked two transgender individuals, what is a woman? If you're a biological guy and you're claiming that you identify as a woman, you should be able to easily define what it is you're actually identifying as. Not surprisingly, no one on the show was able to answer that question. So, what is a woman is the ongoing theme throughout this documentary, and it's intended to expose the lies and propaganda of the gender identity movement. Now, for the record, I'm not going to be reacting to this entire video because this is a pay-to-watch film, and I would rather you give your money to a place like the Daily Wire as opposed to a company like Netflix, Hulu, or Disney who are making content to actively promote gender identity ideology. If you're sick of seeing social justice or wokeness in all of your movies, stop giving your money to companies that make them. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into this.
Is there a son trapped in my daughter's body?
There might be.
If so, how do I get him out?
I'm a licensed marital and family therapist, which basically means I've been trained up to think about like systems, family systems, how we were raised up, how that shapes who we are today.
Before I continue, if you don't know what a gender affirming therapist is, it's basically a fake therapist that agrees with whatever diagnosis the patient is giving them. So if a patient says, I feel like I'm the opposite sex, a gender affirming doctor would say, that might be true. Yes. It's fraud. It is fraudulent.
So on your website, if you'll bear with me,
sure.
Quoting, you say, I use a combination of approaches in my therapeutic work, including anti-oppression, feminist, and narrative frameworks. I rely deeply on systems theory and understanding that individuals are products of and in dialogue with our surroundings, including our families, broader culture, workplaces, nature, and political climates.
That doesn't say anything. What is that?
What does that mean?
We live in gendered worlds where there are certain imperatives that are placed on us about who we are and what we do based on how we've been gendered. From the minute I was assigned female, I was told, okay, these are the kind of clothing that you're going to wear. These are the kind of the type of play that you're going to engage in as a child.
You were born, you weren't assigned, and walk me back to what you just said. You were expected to play in a certain way, so your parents were telling you, no, you have to play in this way. I played with Transformers and Barbies when I was growing up. There was no expectation for me to play with certain toys. What?
That's not how gender works.
How do we know that that's not true? Where did we learn that from?
Yeah, well, I learned that from hearing from transgender people who've said, like, oh, I'm a trans woman, and just because I happen to have a penis, right, that doesn't mean that this is like who I am.
Oh, okay, so you've concluded that if someone has a penis but they say that they're a woman, they must be a woman because they told you. Of course, they told you. It came out of their mouth. It must be true. Did it ever occur to you that they're lying? People lie, ma'am. People lie.
How do I know if I'm a woman? You know,
That's a great question.
I like scented candles, and
yeah.
I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah.
Wait, I haven't seen Sex and the City, so maybe I'm not a woman.
If my mom who gave birth to me is a woman, and my wife is a woman, though I haven't asked her.
Great question. I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Bruh.
Imagine the level of disconnect where you've convinced yourself that you don't know what a woman is even though you were born as a woman. This is how I know this is a deep-rooted emotional issue. They all say that it's an expression, it's their identity. Your gender isn't your identity. All right, this is why it's yuck when I see people with pronouns in their bio and everything is my gender expression and yada, yada, yada. After seeing all that on their page, I still have no idea who they are. Nothing, because their whole identity is their gender expression. It's the same thing I see with a lot of people in the black community where they'll talk about black, blackity, black, black, black. Okay, cool. Who are you? Tell me who you are.
Defining womanhood is just a project of someone who identifies as a woman.
Yeah, but what do they?
What is it?
That's what I'm saying. What do they identify as? They identify as a woman, but what is that?
I honestly don't know.
This is the problem with saying you identify as the opposite sex. If you're unable to actually define it, what are you identifying as? You're identifying as nothing, something whimsical. It's just...
It's a simple question.
Yes.
Dr. Marcy Bowers, first of all, thanks for talking to us.
My pleasure.
So you're a world-renowned gynecologist and surgeon. You're also a transgender woman. Can you tell me a little bit about...
Well, I mean, I identify as a woman, but...
You're a woman, right?
I'm a woman with... I mean, that's my life, day to day, but I have a transgender history.
Sir. First of all, that is dangerous because men and women have different needs medically. So if you're saying there's no difference between a man or a woman and this person is a surgeon, they should be ashamed of themselves. But if there is no difference, you're going to misdiagnose people because now you can just be whatever and anything goes. You have a transgender history, you're a dude. You are a dude. It's okay to be proud of your dudeness.
Does anyone ever regret their surgeries? Or, well, we know they do, but how often do people regret their surgeries?
Well, actually, we don't know that they do. There are legitimate detransitioners, and there are people who truly feel that in their journey, they may have made a mistake. Now, fortunately, this is a really, really uncommon phenomenon.
It's very common. This is going to be the ongoing theme of gender identity as you get more into this. Gender identity is something that makes a lot of money. This person is a surgeon. They make a living off of creating fake vaginas and fake peepees, okay? It would be bad for business if this guy were to admit that people regret having gender reassignment surgery. Like, follow the money.
I don't know if you've ever heard of people in the trans-abled community. These are people who are physically able-bodied but feel like they should be disabled or identify as such. For example, a man who has 2 arms but feels like he should have 1. If a man in this kind of marginalized community went to the doctor and said, I want to have my arm cut off, do you think that...
That doesn't have anything to do with gender identity.
Well, it's someone's self-identity, how someone identifies.
That's someone who has and I'll accept it as a mental diagnosis, a psychiatric condition.
What do you think believing you're the opposite sex is? The medical term for it is gender dysphoria. That is a mental illness. Again, follow the money. They don't bring that up. They don't associate that with their practice because it's going to make them lose money.
Now, you had an incident here a little while ago that went really viral online. Lots of reaction in the public.
Aberdeen Councilwoman T.S.
I remember this.
Confronted owner Don Suker about a sign he posted in his store.
If you are born with a dick, you are not a chick. What's wrong with the sign? What's wrong with that? Can someone explain that to me in the comments? Saying that's transphobic isn't an argument. Can you please articulate what's wrong with this sign?
One day I just put the sign up over here and he came around the corner and I thought, okay, I recognize him. I says, oh, I recognize you. You're our new city councilman. He says, no, I'm your new city councilwoman.
This individual was saying, I'm a woman.
Right.
And you said you're not a woman. How do you know that that person's not a woman?
How do I know?
Because he has eyeballs.
Well, common sense.
That too.
Trans women are women.
Look at this. Look at this right here. I know I have a lot of lurkers in the chat that are always so ready. You're transphobic. Shut up. All right? I want you to pay attention to this. Look at this man's behavior, all right? The trans woman. Look at his behavior. What is the main goal of the trans or gender identity movement? From my observation, it seems to me that the goal is more acceptance, more inclusion. What is so difficult about going to a different store, taking your money and going elsewhere? You don't like that sign? You vote with your dollars. No, instead, you have to go out into the street and cause a big scene because in your bubble, the world revolves around you.
I don't care if you think you're a sheepdog and you come into my store. It don't matter to me. Just don't come in and try to shove that shit down my throat.
Most people on this planet don't give a crap if you identify as whatever. The issue comes is when you try to force that ideology onto the rest of the world. When you start to say, you have to change your speech, you have to believe in this, you have to treat us with respect. When you lack respect about other people's personal beliefs, essentially you're burning bridges with the same people you're demanding acceptance from. Does that make any sense to you?
My name is Michelle Forcier, and I have a medical degree from University of Connecticut, residency, University of Utah Pediatrics, and I've worked for a number of different Planned Parenthoods for 20 years. I do advanced contraception and abortion as well.
Okay, so you worked for Planned Parenthood, you've done abortions, I'm just keeping notes here, and you're a pediatrician, and you have blue hair. I see where this is going.
At what age can a child first begin to transition into another gender or identify themselves as a gender different from how they were born?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's research and data that show that babies and infants understand differences in gender.
So what you're saying is, someone who's experienced in providing abortions at Planned Parenthood is aware of the emotional needs of infants and babies. Did I get that right?
Some children figure out their gender really early, and the reason why we say, oh, it's interesting or important is because they're figuring out their gender identity is not necessarily congruent with their sex assigned at birth.
Kids pick their boogers, can barely wash their own butt, but you're gonna let them decide their own gender identity. Did it ever occur to you that maybe a child isn't mature enough to even be thinking about these ideas? Did it ever occur that maybe they picked up on this nonsense from the adults in the room?
Have you ever met a 4-year-old who believes in Santa Claus? Santa Claus is real for them, but
yeah.
Santa Claus is not actually real.
Yeah, well, but Santa Claus does deliver their Christmas presents.
Do you understand the irony in this conversation? Even though you think that you are the opposite sex, that's not reality.
Well, yeah, but he's not real, though.
To that child, they are.
When I see a child who, believes in Santa Claus, and then let's say this is a boy and he says, I'm a girl. Mm-hmm. This is someone who can't distinguish between fantasy and reality.
Right.
So how could you take that?
Look at her face. Look at her face. This is, why is this so difficult to understand? Kids are imaginative. They're creative. They play pretend. One day you're a superhero. The next day you're on a safari. That's the nature of having an imagination. But those things are temporary, right? Once the costume comes off, you're back to being a little boy or a little girl. This is going to lead to emotional trauma in the long run because you're convincing this child that their imagination is a factor of reality, and that's not reality.
I would say that as a pediatrician and as a parent.
Stop. As a pediatrician, stop saying that. Nobody cares. That these labels mean nothing. As a pediatrician, okay? What does that even mean anymore?
If I say that I feel a certain way, then obviously you can't tell me I don't feel that way. Yeah. But just because I feel that way, does that mean that it's true?
I mean, if it's your reality. Yeah, if it's your reality too.
Stop. There is no your reality. There is no your truth, my reality. The reality, the truth.
What we do in gender studies is not just reduce gender to what sex.
Professor, Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, University of Tennessee.
What we tend to think about in the social sciences today is that sex refers to a set of biological characteristics, and gender is a social construct or category. What I think is often misleading about that characterization is allowed to be sort of messy and complicated. But in that framing, when you split them up into these wholly discrete constructs, studies about sexuality right now, and the kind of cultural ideas about masculinity, both in humans and in lots of other animals.
So are gender and sex two different things, or?
This is a debate tactic. It's called word salad, and how it works is you just spew a bunch of random fancy words in the hopes that you'll convince the person you're speaking to that you're actually informed about the topic. But in this case, he said nothing. Again, a doctor and a professor. How, Sway? Tell me how.
We're talking about gender and sex, and there's a lot of controversies there. If we're talking about a trans woman has all of the male physical characteristics, so would that not be a male then? Couldn't we plainly say this person is a male?
Well, I guess it's like, why are you asking the question?
Because you're at a university, you're a doctor and a professor. You are expected to allow an exchange of ideas to uncover the truth. This is how we learn. You not wanting to answer the question says more about how loose these ideas are to begin with.
So if someone tells
Just
you...
to sort of understand reality, you know?
Well, I mean, I think when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them. So if a person says that they're a woman or they're a man, then that's them telling you their gender is.
So you're just going to believe someone's identity just because they say that it is? So if someone's a known pedophile and a criminal and they say, I'm a good person, you can trust me. Oh yeah, that's fine, because you believe it. This isn't intellectually consistent.
I just mean, someone can make a statement about themselves that could be untrue. Like, for example, if I were to say that I'm a black man, would you accept that, or would you be skeptical?
Are you?
Oh boy.
I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language of like getting to the truth. Again, in social life.
Why is that uncomfortable?
Because it sounds actually deeply transphobic to me.
Yes, he broke, he crumbled. I want you to acknowledge what his demeanor was like at the beginning of this interview. And then look how quickly it turned into, that's transphobic, which, by the way, you're misusing the term transphobic and you're a professor. That's pretty bad. But look how quickly it shifted. Let me explain to you what's actually happening here. In The Naked Communist, I always recommend this book. It's the most comprehensive book out there that explains where all of this wokeness is coming from and what it's being used for. Gender identity ideology, what they're teaching in school, is communist propaganda, okay? This might sound upsetting to someone that got a degree in this. I would be too. And it could upset some people that actually believe this stuff. In summary, you're being brainwashed to be a next generation of Marxist. That's what it is. So, from The Naked Communist, they illustrate 45 goals of a communist takeover, and number 17 is get control of the schools, use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of the Teachers Association, and put the party line in textbooks. Now, you might be asking, why would they do that? In short, those seeking ultimate control over American lives must first create a detached and illiterate citizenry that is malleable to a false narrative and forgetfulness. Learning about gender identity isn't going to help you excel in life. This is an ideology that was made to infect the school system to make kids more emotionally reactionary, as opposed to building emotional discipline and actually learning something that's valuable in the real world.
And if you keep probing, we're going to stop the interview.
If I probe about what the truth is?
You keep invoking the word truth, which is condescending and rude. I'm saying to you...
How is the word truth condescending and rude?
Why don't you tell me what your truth is, and you're walking on 30 seconds more than I...
Look how mad he is. Look how mad he is. You are a fraud. The fact that you're acting in this way, you're not cut out to be in that position. And this is just an interview. Like, even for me in high school, the kids were mean. They were so savage to the school administration, but they didn't crumble with a few questions and being antagonized all day. This guy is. That is so sad, man.
The best way to approach it is by speaking about gender dysphoria, which is an intense loathing and discomfort with one's biological sex. They exist anywhere between 1 in 30,000 people and 1 in 110,000. It's important to distinguish those people from what's happening much more recently, which is kids that never had any discomfort or dysphoria, as it's now called, with their biological sex. And then quite suddenly, as preteens or as adolescents, they come out and they announce that they are gender fluid, or they start to question.
Yeah, they're being created. I hope you guys understand what this woman is saying. This idea of thinking you're the opposite sex or neither or both, that is a result of gender dysphoria, which is a mental illness. So the fact that more kids are believing this stuff means that a mental illness is being normalized and saturated in our society. They are conditioning these kids because, again, we've established that kids are very young, they haven't matured, their brain hasn't fully developed, they're like sponges. So if you saturate society with these concepts, they're going to start believing it, just like any other trend throughout history where people started doing one thing and then shifted gears when it wasn't popular anymore. The gender identity movement is one of those phases. Let me read something very quick again from the Naked Communist. Number 32, support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture. Education, social agencies, welfare programs, and mental health clinics. I have another one for you right here. This is rule number 39, dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. If you have a psychologist that is saying, yes, you are trapped in the wrong body, you are the opposite sex, that psychologist isn't a doctor. They're affirming the mental disorder of that patient. And I like to use the example, if someone who is anorexic said, I feel like I'm fat, a doctor wouldn't prescribe them weight loss pills because they're already anorexic. You don't affirm someone's mental illness by leaning into it more. You're hurting them in that way. This shit pisses me off. I swear, seriously, I am very open about mental well-being, and I understand how that can be traumatic for someone that doesn't get that treated, and you're setting these people up for disaster down the line. Crazy.
Let's get into more specific policy issues. There are some women who say, and I've talked to a few who say this. They say, hey, you know,
He knows that whatever he says, this interview is not going to go the way he planned.
Most transgender people that I know.
Okay. Most transgender people that I know. So if you know two transgender people, then you would say these two individuals. Okay, so I'm just keeping count here.
And it's a very, I think, distinct minority of people. It is a very, I think, we're talking not about a lot of people. I think a person who wants to use a woman's bathroom, who identifies as transgender, really does think of themselves as a female. So how we go about trying to...
That didn't make any sense.
Respect their basic right to live.
What? Who is denying someone the right to live? Who? If you say suicide, you are removing the personal responsibility from the individual to seek treatment, and not treatment from a fake psychologist that's going to affirm their mental illness. If someone makes a decision to commit suicide, that's not my responsibility by just saying, I don't believe in the same thing that you believe. No, none of that. If you, as a biological man, makes the choice to try to appear as the opposite sex through surgery or hormones, you accept that your life is going to be a little bit more difficult to navigate, because that is the reality, okay? You have all of your rights as a biological man or a biological woman. Those are your rights. What you want are special privileges, okay? Now imagine for a second if everyone was able to have the entire world revolve around them just based on how they felt at that very moment. Imagine how much chaos there would be. This congressman is trying to emotionally manipulate people for votes.
Is something that I'm kind of mystified that you're kind of not focusing on first. So we're going straight to the controversy over bathrooms. So, you know what? I think this interview is over.
Yeah.
I think this interview is over.
I just had one last question.
No, the interview's over.
We want to know what
yeah.
is a woman.
Yeah,
Just
he's not going to answer that.
self-defense.
He's going to answer. He's not going to answer that. Here's the other thing that people like this tend to do to emotionally manipulate people is that they'll say that trans individuals are more susceptible to hate crimes and violence. And I'll say the same thing now as I said during the BLM peaceful protest. What concrete evidence do you have to prove that someone is targeted specifically because of that characteristics? Oftentimes, there is no proof. It just goes strictly based off of feelings to paint this picture that a certain group of people are more vulnerable or are easily targeted because of some characteristics.
Can a man become a woman?
No.
No?
No.
What about a transgender? Transgender?
No.
No?
It look like if you want to become a lady but you're a man, you have something wrong in your mind. Something wrong in your family, something wrong in you.
Isn't it interesting how a tribe out in the middle of Africa, off the grid, are able to articulate that there is something wrong? So what now? You're going to call them transphobic? And if you say yes, let me explain to you. There's a world outside of the little bubble that you're living in, okay? There are people out there that don't believe the same nonsensical ideas as you do. I know that's very difficult to understand, but this is the problem with people complaining, oh, you're transphobic, or you're a TERF, or you don't accept my identity. Get used to it. When you leave this bubble that you're in, you're going to encounter a whole world out there of people that are going to look at you like you have 5 heads. So either build mental resilience and be confident in the choices you make with your body, or maybe you should think twice about doing it in the first place.
What about if someone was non-binary?
Come again?
Non-binary. So it sounds like you don't spend a lot of time thinking about gender. You just kind of live your lives. You don't think much about it.
He said, no, because we believe that's a God plan.
Yeah, yes.
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male through synthetic hormones and surgery. I will never be a man. Is it transphobic for me to tell the truth?
Per the social justice narrative, absolutely, the truth is transphobic. Yes. Despite all of the surgery and hormones that this person took, they are still living in reality. They accept the reality that they are still a biological woman. Is the truth transphobic? If so, you should ask yourself why you require someone to lie in order to feel better about yourself.
Can you tell me about the procedures that you had?
I've had 7 surgeries. I've had 1 stress heart attack. I've had a helicopter life ride with a pulmonary embolism. I've had 17 rounds of antibiotics. I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra for 17 months. Nobody would help me, including the doctor that did this to me because I lost my insurance. I get infections every 3 to 4 months. I'm probably not going to live very long.
Was there any real discussion of the risks and the
There
side
never
effects?
is. Never.
No.
Never.
No, there's not. And I know that people want to think that there is, but there's not. For the first time in history, a marginalized group has a huge dollar sign on the top of their head.
Yeah.
We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States promoting that. That's a phalloplasty. That's a bottom surgery. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a 67% complication rate. That will kill me.
Let me break this down. You introduce gender identity to a small child who hasn't matured, their brain hasn't fully developed, and then you start to convince them that it's okay to lead with their emotions. Therefore, now there's no distinction between their imagination versus what is reality. You then take that kid and you eventually get them to a point where they want to make life-altering changes to their body because they've been convinced by the people around them that they are exactly how they feel they are. Therefore, their feelings are valid. Go ahead, do it. So you have these procedures, and now because of a high complication rate, congratulations, you've just created a permanent customer for the pharmaceutical industry. Not only are these people banking off of all the money they're making from these hormones and these gender reassignment procedures, but now this patient is going to keep coming back for their antibiotics. They're going to keep coming back for their chemotherapy. They're going to keep coming back for all of the follow-up procedures that they might need because of all the complications and chemicals that they took because too many adults in the room were cowardice to tell them that this is a bad idea.
Medical affirmation begins when the patient says they're ready for it.
So
that could be a kiddo who is just starting puberty and panicking because they're getting breast buds or their penis is getting bigger and busier and they're worried about all kinds of masculine changes. And that way, puberty blockers, which are completely reversible and don't have permanent effects, are wonderful because we can put that pause on puberty. Just like if you were listening to music, you put the pause on and we stop the blockers and puberty would go right back to where it was. The next note in the song just delayed that period of time.
She said at the beginning of this documentary that a lot of infants and babies are in tune with their gender identity. So per this logic, if a 2-year-old was able to communicate that they felt like they were the opposite sex, you would inject them with the hormones that they are requesting.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders?
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview because it seems like it's going in a particular direction.
Well, you're a medical professional.
I am a medical professional.
So you don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids or?
Again, I'm a physician and I use medication. You're choosing exploitive words. Drugs I give to kids.
I'm choosing a
chemical
word that was in a dictionary.
That's not a correct term for puberty blocking.
I could like look it up on my phone.
Okay, see, this is another thing that you'll find with communist tactics is that they weaponize language and they'll switch the definition of something to create confusion. Oh, you can't call it that because that's not what it's actually defined as. So therefore, it isn't what it is. Lady, it doesn't matter what you want to define it as. What is it used for and why are you using it on kids? If you are a medical professional, because you keep saying I am a pediatrician. Who cares? What does that even mean? If you can't explain what these drugs are used for or what's in these drugs or what the side effects of these drugs are, you're not a doctor. You're not a doctor. You're an activist masquerading around as a doctor.
So now we are seeing kids that are identifying as animals going to school and they are purring instead of answering questions and they meow, and the teachers are not allowed to question it because it's considered a queer identity.
It's a queer identity to believe you're an animal. This is, my friends, the slippery slope of affirming a mental disorder. You start off by saying this biological man is actually a woman because they identify as such, and then you start the trend of now you can identify as an animal. I've seen cases where people identify as another race entirely. So at what point can that child identify as an age that is older than they actually are? Or when can a grown person identify as an age that is very young compared to how they are? This is what society has set themselves up for by enabling this behavior and lying to appeal to feelings. We've now opened up a can of worms to allow other ideas that don't make any sense to now also be affirmed.
I am a 27-year-old transgender woman. I am a wolf-therian and a member of the furry fandom.
When and how did you discover this inner wolfness?
Probably around age 10 or 11.
Are you able to communicate with the wolves?
Am I going to have a conversation with a wolf in the way that I'm communicating you and I? Obviously not. Am I going to read their body language, respond appropriately to their behaviors and their nonverbal cues? Yes.
Would you be able to give us an example of this wolf communication?
No.
So You're comfortable saying that you are the opposite sex and that you identify as a wolf, but demonstrating your ability to communicate in wolf language is too far.
Hollywood is pressing
yes.
LGBTQ plus
Oh,
matters
yes.
in so many movies. We're seeing it in the way Amazon sets up its algorithms. There are all kinds of factors in society that are pushing what would really be numerically a fairly minority interest.
Okay, so check this out. I'm going to read you a few more rules from the Naked Communist. The first one is number 21. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Okay? So if you're wondering why there's so much wokeness and social justice nonsense in all of your favorite movies and why your favorite characters are being race swapped, gender swapped, sexuality swapped, this is why. Number 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness and repulsive, meaningless art. Okay? And here's another one, number 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Why are we normalizing a mental illness? Why is it something that people are glamorizing? Why is it so urgent for kids to learn about gender identity all of a sudden? We didn't learn about this stuff 20, 30 years ago, so why start now?
The whole idea of social contagion, that there could be something in one's social environment that could play some role in somebody coming out identifying as trans. Would you say that that is definitely part of your story?
When I look back, I don't think I would have ever even considered seeing myself as a boy without these social aspects.
Yes, yes. How come there are more people identifying as non-binary or queer and transgender now than 50 years ago? It's because we have social media now. We have an ability to always stay connected, and the second a new trend pops up, people are going to start following that like clockwork. I will never let my kid have a TikTok account. Honestly, I hope TikTok goes away by that time, but no. No.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit.
No, it's more than a teeny tiny bit. Follow the money, okay? Follow the money. This person is not going to admit that there is a big social contagion because it's going to hurt their business. This is so obvious.
Looking back on it, it was the same pattern, just kids who were really struggling, kids who were very alone and isolated.
They have anxiety. They don't fit in with their peers. They don't know where they belong.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't have a welcoming family life. They just got caught up in these communities online.
Then they discover, hey, there's this group of people, and they also don't fit in. They're different. They're not sure who they are. Gee, that's where I fit in.
I mean, guys, this is no different from any other trend, and this is why they're starting to get these kids when they're younger. When I was in high school, I didn't fit in. I eventually became a goth, and there I found my sense of community with other weirdos. But if you're not a goth, you're a skater. If you're not that, you're emo. If you're not that, you're punk rock. Or maybe you're one of the anime weebs. Is that how I say it? Weeb? Weebo? Is it weebo? Is it waifu? I don't know what the terms are. Listen, I rarely watch anime, but you get what I'm saying. Everyone has their little cliques, their little groups that they can feel like they're included in. And my point is, the average high schooler or someone even in junior high, they're still just trying to find their place, right? They're trying to make friends. They want to feel included. You have that dynamic of the popular kids and the nerds, and that never goes away. You're always going to have these little groups, these little communities, and this is no different.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
Trans rights. This is only going in one direction. You will respect us.
No? No. You can't demand respect, but fail to give respect to others. That doesn't make any sense. Do you respect people who don't believe in your ideology? If the answer is no, then maybe you're not actually looking for acceptance or respect. It sounds like you're more interested in assimilation, compliance, obedience. Not gonna happen.
Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
What is that?
was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
So if you can define a woman differently and it's subjective depending on who you ask, and womanhood is something that it's inclusive and it can be all kinds of different things, then why are you transitioning to appear as a woman in the first place? Because if that applies for women, then that must apply for men as well. It's whatever. We have different ideas about what that is. So what are you actually trying to shapeshift into?
You want to reduce women, you want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals, our chromosomes, right? That's what you're saying.
You want to do is
that's
what you want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood, and turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
Key point here. For anyone that says, you don't respect trans women, because I get that comment a lot, you're so transphobic. If you can't define a woman, yet you're parading around as a woman, you're not respecting women. You get that, right? You're demanding the acceptance of women while also saying that womanhood is meaningless. It means nothing. We don't know what it is. Do you hear yourself? All right, that was amazing. Easily one of my favorite documentaries. Very well put together, visually appealing. Granted, I didn't really learn much. None of this is new to me, but it is going to be new to a lot of people that have been actively pushing this nonsense. If you promote gender ideology after watching this, something is wrong with you. Either up here or you're just doing it for money, because there is nothing that can justify promoting this propaganda, knowing all of the consequences that follow from it. I hope that if you watch this and you want to see the full thing, you'll subscribe over at Daily Wire and you genuinely give this documentary a try. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Matt Walsh, Daily Wire, you guys did an awesome job. Keep it up. And as for everyone else, if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments below what other nonsense would you like me to react to. My name is Gothix, and I will see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. If you want to keep my grift going, consider picking up some official merch by visiting nosissnows.com/Gothix or joining my locals community at gothix.locals.com for more content. As always, you can help amplify my message by giving this video a thumbs up and by sharing it online with your friends. Until next time.